Each NBA enthusiast of a specific age has heard Sirius by the Alan Parsons Venture a larger number of times than they can check. All alone, this appears to be peculiar, given that the 1/14 the English prog-rock tune was never discharged as a solitary, has no verses, and is progressively an instrumental prologue to the title track on the band's sixth collection, Eye in the Sky, than an independent song of devotion. It is, as such, a large amount of the work that the band put out during the late 1970s and mid-80s, dynamic generally as in it is a long synthesizer-driven form to no place specifically, cushioned out by all of silly rich studio ornamentation accessible at that point and impelled by the band's solitary style of pill and powder self-importance. The collection went platinum, yet has in no way like the sort of existence in the wake of death that Sirius has appreciated. A fan-made YouTube video for an all-encompassing blend of the tune lays it all over a progression of sci-fi mountain extents and pastel Martian skyscapes and faintly Egyptological peaks, and has about 9 million perspectives. There is an explanation behind this. The Chicago Bulls have utilized Sirius as the soundtrack for their beginning lineup at the assembled place for almost 30 years now. However, throughout the previous 2 decades the tune's recursive synths and taking off superfluous strings and prominently bombastic guitar line have filled in as the prologue to some shockingly forgettable groups. The courtside broadcaster has said the names of Chris Duhon and Marcus Fizer and Paul Zipser and the turning grey 38-year-old rendition of Charles Oakley over that music, and for those transitory minutes in an obscured field the beginning lineup has sounded significantly more forcing and energizing than it basically ever was. With all credit where due to Alan Parsons and his more extensive task, most would agree that the entirety of this is on the grounds that, during the 90s, this melody was what it seemed like when Michael Jordan's Bulls were going to address everyone. For each individual that thought about NBA ball during Jordan's sharp and wondrous rule on the game, the tune triggers a blend of veneration and expectation as something like an autonomic reaction. The enormity and essentialness of that group is the reason this silly tune some way or another holds its weight regardless of the Bulls burning through a large portion of the most recent 2 decades in irritable, obstinately pot-bound average quality. Man, inevitably that tune gets me unfailingly, Steph Curry said of Sirius in 2016. The Bulls group it was presenting that year dominated 42 matches, lost 40, and didn't make the end of the season games. The melody that gave Curry chills ran under the PA fellow, putting some confidence smelled on the names of Taj Gibson and Tony Snell, Curry's Warriors, which simply edged the 72 successes of the 95-96 Bulls to get done with the best ordinary season record in the group's history, beat the 15-16 model by 31. Also, still it works. The dynastic Bulls worked around Michael Jordan, reinforced by a couple of exceptional advantageous stars in Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman, and drove by mentor and curve boomer official Megas Phil Jackson were more than the characterizing group of its period, in spite of the fact that there were evidently that. As a result of Jordan, who was the most popular and most splendid competitor of his age, those Bulls were the most significant games group on earth, not simply the best and generally predominant in any game, however in a progressively significant sense the greatest. The line's splendor and mass stuck the remainder of the association into inaccessible circle, and Jordan himself, both with his effortless and unappeasable significance and the overwhelming thickness of his destructive and all-devouring intensity, was its liquid center. The discussion about whether Jordan is or isn't the best ball player in history has now spread over entire ages without ever very turning out to be intriguing or moving toward anything like an end. Without any genuine games to discuss and given the monstrous expectation for The Last Move, ESPN and Netflix's new 10-hour CO creation on the last period of that administration, Twitter will be in all likelihood be overwhelmed with barbershop-grade misconception and superheated precision on this subject by and by, proceeding for some period running between the 5 weeks over which the arrangement is set to run and until the wrathful sees at long last case us. It fits with both what accomplishes and doesn't work about the principal hour of the last move that we at last hear the scoffing synths of Sirius as the scene wraps up. It works, obviously. I have observed an excessive amount of ball, and by bet a lot of my passionate prosperity on the NBA during the decade Jordan administered over the game with his weird mix of savagery and elegance, for it not to work. The melody despite everything seems like something fantastic and fantastically vainglorious and perhaps somewhat unsurprising going to start, but it shows up just as the scene is finishing, after the last move spreads out its overwhelming arrogance, a strangely close glance at an incredible and enormously loaded group toward the finish of a remarkable run, worked around over 500 hours of at no other time seen film and made with the support of such groups' most significant characters. Be that as it may, there's just so much emotional or story pressure in play. The group winning its third consecutive title and sixth in 8 seasons is definitely not a spoiler. The interest of Jordan, who permitted the cameras access to the group just depending on the prerequisite that the recording would stay in the NBA's vaults until he agreed to have it discharged, additionally brings down the roof a piece. Jordan is just not somebody who gets told no frequently. Consider him appearing on set to film a Hanes advertisement with what must be depicted as a Führer-motivated mustache, and afterward consider that the mustache made it into the spots. The basic demonstration of him saying yes to the creation ensured that it would, somewhat, recount to the story that he needed told as he needed it told. The very reality that this arrangement is some way or another 2 hours longer than ESPN's rambling 8-section narrative setting O.J. Simpson's life and preliminary into an advanced history of Los Angeles and American preference broadcasts an impeccably Jordan vibe of hyper-competitive unimportance. As a meeting subject, as well, Jordan isn't particularly astute or liberal. When he returns to the issues with Bulls GM Jerry Krause that were destroying the group during the season Phil Jackson named the last move, Jordan despite everything appears to be convincingly abused, however he generally kind of appears that way. At any rate in this hour, the most convincing piece of Jordan's meeting portions is viewing the uncontrollably fluctuating degree of golden alcohol in the cut glass tumbler that sits at his correct hand. Of course, this first hour is for the most part about filling in a backstory that is, at this point, amazingly notable to ball fans. Executive Jason Hehir starts in October 1997, with Jordan and the Bulls preparing for one final title run, turns the clock back to Jordan's ascent to significance at the College of North Carolina and unexpected supernova emission into fame in Chicago as a new kid on the block in 1984. And afterward comes back to the uncomfortable apotheosis of the last move season. There is fun stuff studded in there. I was superior to him. Jordan's kindred corridor of famer James commendable reviews of the one-on-one that Jordan dragooned him into while the two were at UNC, for around 14 days yet nothing particularly new, and turning out actually Barack Obama as a talking head doesn't do a lot to zest up well-known material on Jordan's social import or thumbnail judgments of Krause's Napoleon mind-boggling or confounded relationship with Jackson. The At No Other Time Seen film in the primary scene, much like the At No Other Time Seen film in Netflix's stretched narrative arrangement on Aaron Hernandez, doesn't really shout out for rediscovery, in spite of the fact that fans on edge to see Jordan asking late NBA chief David Harsh how's the spouse, or showing up on a French syndicated program or being a dick to reinforcement wing Scott Burrell won't be baffled. Regardless of whether the narrating in the main scene is for the most part repetition and loose, there is additionally the matter of the recording that has been seen commonly previously, of Jordan at UNC, in his initial NBA profession, and at his transcending peak. There's a strain between the exceptionally qualified talking heads portraying the peculiarity of Jordan's brightness and the game features bearing it out. I observed a large portion of these minutes as they occurred, at once in my life when ball made a difference more to me than some other single thing, but then there is as yet something surprising and unlikely about them. Jordan is amazingly quick, At that point jarringly moderate once airborne he rises and transcends the players whipping ceaselessly underneath him and afterward just by one way or another stops and screwing remains there. He appears to locate some abnormal second level, or is impelled uncannily forward in the wake of appearing to delay. The individuals around him go here and there, and Jordan is solidified alone at his apex. Here has a story to tell, and quite a while in which to tell it, and he scarcely starts that work in this scene. An hour is quite a while to sit tight for the pre-game exhibition. Be that as it may, where Michael Jordan the b-ball player is concerned, I can just second Steph Curry on Sirius. It gets me unfailingly.